I've seen people who are in families where probably nothing they were ever told was true. Like, it was never just true. It was always twisted and bent in some way by whoever was talking to them for the purposes of that person. Power or domination or positive illusion or delusion or something. Like, all the communication within the family was motivated. It's so awful to grow up in an environment like that because you can't get a grip on what's real. And then, it can get worse than that in that the person will tell you that they love you and they'll act all sweet, but every time you do anything that's even vaguely productive and useful, they'll just criticize you to death. And all the while telling you that they love you. It's really horrible. And that's all tangled up with deception and lies. And it's a weird thing because if you look at the Freudian hypotheses, you'll notice that Freud attributed an awful lot of psychopathology to repression. But I think the distinction between repression and self-deception or deceit is very permeable. It's like, what's the difference between repressing something and lying to yourself about it? Well, Freud would say often that repression occurs unconsciously, but I really wonder about that. I think that what happens is that something happened or you did something that you don't like and it's bothering you, and you could think it through, but you just decide not to. You just don't think it through, so it's left vague and uncertain and, it's fairly emotionally salient, but you just refuse to think it through, and you practice doing that until you've built up a habit of not thinking that through, and then you forget that you've built up the habit, and then it's like it's being repressed unconsciously. But I think that or at least you knew when you first did it. And so, when you meet people who are acting in a twisted and peculiar way, and you ask yourself, they're very manipulative, say, you ask yourself, well, do they know what they're doing? The answer to that could be, well, no. But another answer could be, yeah, but they knew once. They knew when they made the decision to start acting like that, but after they did it 100 times or so and made it into an automatic routine, well, then they forgot its origin and now it runs autonomously. And so now they don't know, but they did know. And so, this is the sort of point, and this is the real point of the existentialist, where clinical psychology and the claims of morality start to become very tightly aligned. And it's something that the psychiatric and psychological industries, so to speak, don't really tackle head on. My experience has been that in these situations, for example, where the person has 5 terrible things going on in their life, there's just deception twisted in and strewn in all of that. People are betraying each other, and there's no fidelity in the relationships, there's no clear and genuine communication, everything's manipulation, no one admits to what they're really up to. There's a lot of false and saccharine love, which has absolutely nothing to do with love. It's all for appearance, and you cannot be healthy in a situation like that. In my experience, apart from the tragedies of life, there is nothing that hurts people more than deception. Lies do people in.
This is how to deal with negative people. First, you have to delineate between someone who has negative feelings and somebody who is negative. If one of my friends comes to me and they just want to talk about something or they want help with their problem, that's fine. Happy to help. But there are people who are incessantly and perpetually negative. These people's identity is an amalgamation of their problems and nothing more. They dump all their problems onto you, and when you provide a solution, they don't implement it. This cycle repeats over and over again until you just realize that they don't actually want to solve their problem. They just want to complain about them. These are the people you have to avoid. Your time is the only asset that you can't replenish. It's the most valuable thing you have, and you cannot waste a second of it on people like this.
I talked to my associate, my friend, about firing people, and he said, I enjoy it. That really surprised me. And this is someone I admire and respect, very competent person, by the way. I said, well, why is that? He said, well, I go into corporations and I ferret out the people who are kissing up and kicking down. I ferret out the narcissists. I ferret out the people who, as I alluded to, take credit when they haven't done anything and cast aspersions on others when they have done something and who are clearly not doing their job. And then also, I go after people for whom it would be better in some real sense to be off doing something else. It was really interesting to me because it's also possible that some of these traits, the more psychopathic traits, have a positive utility socially, even speaking morally, when they're combined with other personality traits. Maybe it's not so bad to be low in agreeableness if you're high in conscientiousness.
Someone gave me advice. They said, not everyone that's hurt you cares. Forgiveness lets you off the hook. Why would you carry that with you? The person doesn't care. Why are you tainting and infecting all the amazing moments that could happen in your life with someone that doesn't care how they hurt you. So how do you figure out how to let that go?
You think, well, people have good intentions, you know, that you especially think that if you're naive and agreeable. So all of you who are sitting there out there thinking people have good intentions, you're probably high in agreeableness. But that's not always the case. People can have very dark motivations that are fully conscious and very well elaborated. And you can't just be thinking about people who have good intentions but have somehow gone wrong. If you ever meet someone who isn't like that and you think that, you're just a tree with ripe fruit to be plucked. So you don't want to be in that situation. You have to keep your eyes open.